In your life, what is your greatest regret?
Oh. You know, I really don't have regrets. I am the person that says, you know, as soon as you look back in your history and you come up with something that you feel like you want to change, something else has to change. You know, so.
What about your biggest disappointment?
Once again, that's the same analogy. You know, disappointment to me, to win, you gotta lose. To be successful, you gotta have something that's not successful. To be happy, you gotta have disappointment. So I think all of those things have evolved and happened to make me who I am and understand the benefits and the privileges I have from being who I am, you know, and not to wear it on my sleeve, be very humble about it. That's one thing my parents taught me very well is, you know, don't wear your reputation, don't wear your accolades, don't wear your, you know, your personality on your sleeve. Let it happen, let it be you. It is who you are. Don't hide from it, but don't wear it and rub it in people's faces. So, you know, when you sit there and you say, well, you know, 1990 or 2005, they voted me as like the best or the most popular athlete. You know, well, it's ironic that I'm the youngest of the three. So in essence, it's all relegated on who's watching me now. If you ask 20 years from now, I'm pretty sure LeBron may beat me, you know, based on who's going to be making the voting. So I say that to understand that, you know, it is what it is. You know, I don't wear it, I don't showcase it, I don't rub it in other people's faces, someone else's opinion. If you ask me, I could never give you an opinion about things like that because as an athlete, all you want to do is be the best athlete.
Well, on that point, when we did the interview 12 years ago, you made a big point that you wanted it to be private, that you wanted to take back your wife, that you had been in the public eye and so forth and so forth. Now, I'll be jumping around, but I have this burning question that I think you're in a very unique position to answer.
All right.
College kids can't wait to leave school to go into the pros. There's no real rule that you have to be 21 or that you have to finish 4 years.
You have to be 19.
I'm just saying that, but in other words, at age 19, when you're still a very young man, you give up your education, you give up the college experience and so forth and so on. And upon reflection, I know that you're going to say that some people, for financial reasons, need to, but what do you think is really the right way for the NCAA or the NBA to handle this?
Well, you know, I've been on both sides, obviously. You know, I left school at the age of 20, 21, my junior season. It wasn't a financial decision. It was more or less a business decision, an opportunity for me to play professional basketball. I was, you know, so close to graduation, so education still was a part of everything that I do, or did at the time. My feelings about a kid being able to go to the pros, and I've seen both sides, is that you should allow a kid, if he feels like from a financial standpoint, that he wants to go and work and earn a living. I think there's a certain way that you can go about between NCAA as well as the NBA and all parties involved, that you can systematically build a way to where that kid now at the age of 18 or 19, if they want to go and play professional sports, they should be allowed to. Kind of like baseball. You know, baseball, I think, has a very good plan. You know, where if you come out, you get drafted at 18, you start in the minor league system and work your way up to where your skills determine if you are qualified to play on a certain level. And along with that comes the compensated aspect of what, you know, you're going to be compensated based on your skill set at that particular time, which I think is very correct. So I think from a basketball standpoint, and if you're 18 and you choose not to go to the pros and you go to college, I think you should be obligated to stay in college for a length of time to where you can educate yourself, you focus on education, you focus on your maturity, you focus on your development of your bodies and your mind, and then be allowed to come into the NBA, not the CBA. So I think to me that is a perfect model to where everybody gets exactly what they deserve or what they need.
All right, so what's in this young man's head? Is it about getting the best deal he can, or is it playing in the city that he wants to, and there is his hometown, or is the city not an issue? It's what are the criteria upon which they hope they get drafted by a certain team?
Well, I mean, I think that's a little bit hard to determine because you in a professional league of multiple teams. When I say a league, you want to be able to have competitive balance within the league. And if a player or an individual can choose based on the city to go to whatever respective team that he wants, you may have, you're going to have some discrepancy in terms of the talent pool and competitive nature. So if everybody wants to go to Chicago, you only can have 12 jobs in Chicago. Chicago is going to get all the best players. What about Dallas? What about Washington? What about these other cities? Detroit, Indiana, where they may not be metropolis of cities, but they still have passion for the game of basketball. And you're starting to see a little bit of it now to where all the stars are starting to gang up and go on one team. I think it's going to hurt the overall aspect of the league from a competitive standpoint. And you're going to have just one or two teams that's going to be great, and the other 28 teams are going to be garbage, or they're going to have a tough time surviving in the business environment.
So what role, positive or negative, does an agent play in helping the young man make the best decisions?
Well, I'll give you a good example.
And I ask you that because you're not only a player, but you're an owner.
I was on the same side. Yeah, I was on the other side, and now I'm on this side. Yeah. And I think what the agent's responsibilities is to educate the individuals, educate the kids to be able to make sound decisions from where they sit or what they think they want. A lot of times you have the agents make a decision based on what they want as opposed to what the players want. And sometimes it's not even in the best interest of the players. It may be in the best interest of the agents. I think if you can regulate that, which is very tough, if you can moderate that to where that player or that athlete's going to be educated about his positions, that he can make sound decisions that's going to be best suited for him and his family, that's the correct agenda. My agent, when I came out of college, I had obviously I was in college for 3 years. Coach Smith, my parents taught me, right from wrong, taught me to understand and listen and learn. And then I got with an agent that basically educated me about the positions that I was in, how to, to manage my own, my personalities, the business aspect, how that translates into, in the business world, things of that nature. To a point now, I can do a lot of those things on my own. It's an education. I lived an education. I went through an education based on, how my life was lived. I think that can be very helpful for the kids today, but because the agent is not that motivated or that's not their energy, they're not teaching the kids, and the kids then, by the time they're not useful to the agent, now have nothing, no decision-making knowledge. A lot of times they may end up broke, they mismanage their money. You can avoid some of those problems, especially when you talk about the kids are skipping college and going to the pros. Where are they going to get that education from? The best support system they have is the agent. So if the agent's not going to educate them, you tell me they're going to learn, the pros and cons about being independent and being able to manage their own finances. So when they're not represented by that agent, or they're out of the game of basketball, out of the game of football, can they still articulate and make decisions just from a business sense? I think that's one of the major issues. Remember, you see a lot of players who, when they retire, they have the money. They've mismanaged their money. They have
in all sports.
In all sports, not just basketball, football.